Yeah.
A top 10 showdown in Death Valley at night? College football? You've done it again. Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, bringing you some of the best college football news, predictions, and analysis. Make sure to like this video, go follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Gridiron Expert, and check out our official website, thegridironexpert.com, where you can receive more news and analysis by signing up for our weekly newsletter and also signing up for our expert picks. The links for all of those things are in the description below, so make sure you don't miss out on any of the extra fun and any of the extra college football content. Well, it is the only top 10 matchup in Week 7. And of course, it is the best matchup of Week 7. Number 7 Florida travels to number 5 LSU, Death Valley, at night, primetime ESPN. A game that has major SEC implications and major college football playoff implications. Once again, you couldn't ask for anything better. You couldn't ask for a better way to conclude Saturday night, a way to conclude Week 7 of the college football season. And we are here to break down this huge matchup. Shed a little insight on the history between the Gators and the Tigers and what each team needs to do to escape Death Valley with a win. So first, a little bit of history. Florida and LSU have met every single year since 1971. So this is a very underrated rivalry, in my opinion. These two squads have had some classics in recent years, dating, of course, all the way back to 71, but most recently since 2006, where they have had 4 matchups as top 10 opponents, all coming, once again, since 2006. But not many people talk about LSU and Florida as being one of the more dominant rivalries and one of the bigger rivalries in college football. It's always the Iron Bowl or the Red River showdown that we have coming this Saturday as well. But Florida and LSU has some major histories and major beef between one another. In those 4 meetings that I mentioned between top 10 teams since 2006, Florida has won 2, LSU has won 2. Florida actually leads the all-time series over the Tigers 33-29-3. And the past 5 games between the Tigers and the Gators have been decided by 1 possession. That includes Florida's win last year over LSU, 27-19 in the Swamp. A game that really showed that Dan Mullen was legit. A game that showed Dan Mullen's going to have Florida back on track to be a national power. And that's exactly where he has his Florida squad right now. Number 7 in the country, fresh off a huge win at the Swamp over Auburn, 24-13, where they shut down Bo Nix and Gus Malzahn's offense. So let's talk about the quarterback play. Let's talk about the offense. We know that Dan Mullen is a quarterback guru. He's a whisperer. He knows how to conduct an offense. He is an offensive mastermind. The same never really could have been said for Ed Orgeron, but he has transformed this entire LSU offense in a very quick amount of time. Very short amount of time. Joe Burrow for LSU, we know his name. He's a Heisman Trophy contender. He obviously owns the edge at quarterback in this matchup against the Gators. He has thrown for over 1,800 yards, nearly 1,900 yards so far this season, 22 touchdowns, and just 3 interceptions. So Burrow does a phenomenal job of taking care of the football, and he has the 4th best QBR in the entire nation. It's pretty dang good. Pretty dang good for a second-year starter for LSU. Arguably the best quarterback that LSU has seen, maybe in its history. I know that might be a stretch for some, but if you go back and look at the Les Miles era and the time before that, LSU really has not had this potent of a passing attack ever. Or at least for some in very recent memory. Never under the Les Miles era. So Joe Burrow has transformed his LSU offense, who was averaging 54.6 points per game. The best in the entire nation. On the other side, you have Kyle Trask. Of course, the backup for Florida. He wasn't the starter at the beginning of the season. Felipe Franks was. And his injury, as devastating as it was to him and as much as you never want to see a player go down, may have been a blessing in disguise for Florida and their Florida fans. Because Felipe Franks was, 1, very inconsistent. And 2, he wasn't quite the leader, in my opinion. He was not a very good leader for this Florida Gators football team. In steps Kyle Trask, who hadn't started a football game in 7 years, waited his turn all through high school, waited his turn all through Florida, and finally got his chance when Franks went down against Kentucky. He has stepped in and done phenomenal. He's undefeated as a starter with the Gators now. He's completing 72% of his passes. He's thrown for 881 yards and 7 touchdowns compared to just 2 interceptions. Kyle Trask has done a phenomenal job. And if for some reason he fails, if he struggles in this game against LSU, Emory Jones stepped in a little bit in that Auburn game and played just fine. Played phenomenally well. Way better than anyone thought that he was going to when Trask is out for a little bit. So Florida's got a pretty dang good offense too, averaging 32.3 points per game. LSU just owning a pretty decent edge there. Let's talk about the defense for a second, though. We know about the offense. We know the quarterback's names. We know about the coaches. We know about the history. Defensively, though, that's where this game will be decided. That's how the game has been decided many times in recent memory between LSU and Florida. Last year, it was Florida who had the pick 6 at the end of the game to put them up by 8 points. Yeah, sure, LSU had a chance to go down there and tie it, but that pick 6 really, really sealed the deal. It was a few years ago, the last time here in Baton Rouge, that Florida had that goal line stand that won the game for them, but also clinched the SEC East title for the Gators. Defense has played such a huge role in this rivalry, and once again, it will in 2019. The major question I have for Florida is, can their offensive line hold up against LSU's pass rush? Now, LSU's pass rush is not as tenacious, not as dominant as Auburn's was when Florida faced off against them last week. Florida, their offensive line struggled mightily against what could be arguably the best defensive line in the entire nation. LSU's pass rush is not nearly as good as Florida's pass rush, and we'll get to that in a second. But LSU still, through 5 games, has 13 sacks. And Florida's offensive line is by far the weakest point of this team. And they're playing in Death Valley at night, and the crowd is going to be wild. It's going to be hard to hear down there. You're going to have to bark out signals. You're going to have to create adjustments. They're going to be calling audibles. Can the offensive line adjust? Can they shut down LSU's defensive line? They allowed 4 sacks versus Auburn. A lot of those resulted in strip sacks. And if Florida wants to come on the road and win this game in Death Valley, they cannot afford for Kyle Trask or Emory Jones to get beat up in this game and to have strip sacks and petty turnovers like that. So how will Florida's offensive line fare against the LSU defensive line? How will Florida's passing game fare against LSU's secondary? You know, the Tigers pride themselves on being DBU, although it really hasn't looked like that lately. They're allowing 19.8 points per game, which isn't bad, but isn't nearly as good as I thought LSU would have been defensively this season. They allowed 38 to Texas. Not that big of a deal. Texas is a good offensive team. They did allow 38 points to Vanderbilt, though, and that's unacceptable. They're allowing 206.8 passing yards per game. And with the elite secondary that I expected out of LSU this season, I thought that number would be a lot lower. So will they step up in this game? Will they shut down Kyle Trask, who had over 200 yards against Auburn's defense last week? Will they shut down Kyle Trask in this passing game, or will they still allow Florida to get up some easy yards through the air and get well over 250 passing yards and keep them in this game? Because I can promise you, neither team is going to have that much success on the ground. Both teams are holding their opponents to under 100 rushing yards per game, and I don't expect that to change in this matchup Saturday night. Both teams have dominant defenses when it comes to the rushing game. For LSU, my question for them when it comes down to defense, and we're really questioning Florida's defense, is how will Joe Burrow first off do against Florida's pass rush? The Gators have one of the best defensive lines in terms of their pass rush in the nation, best front 7. 26 sacks this season. 26 sacks so far this season against their opponents. Yeah, 10 of those came against Miami. Sure, still counts. And that's double what LSU has this season. 13 for the Tigers, 26 for Florida. They've allowed 9. They've allowed 9 sacks. So we kind of dogged on their offensive line a little bit, but 4 of those 9 came against Auburn. That's a problem. That's a problem. And that was at home as well. Also, how is Joe Burrow going to fare against Florida's secondary? A secondary that's only allowing 183.3 passing yards per game and forced 3 interceptions from Bo Nix at Auburn. Florida's defense is only allowing 9.5 passing yards per game. You know, Joe Burrow, we mentioned how many points he's led this offense to. He's averaging 416 passing yards per game. So something has to give there. Either Florida's secondary is going to step up and slow down Joe Burrow because no one's been able to do that, or Joe Burrow is going to continue his dominance and continue to show why he is indeed one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC, one of the best quarterbacks in the nation, and a Heisman Trophy candidate. So those are the major questions there. So the keys for this game, I'm sure you've been able to put together some of them. We'll start with Florida, what they need to do to come on the road and win. And many people are going to be quick to write off Florida. Well, they thought they were overrated last week. No, guys, come on now. They're still not overrated. If you continue to call Florida overrated after the win they just took against Auburn, you need to have a major gut check and maybe learn some college football, because Florida's not overrated with that victory and that performance they had against Auburn. Florida, to come on the road and win this game at LSU, is not going to be some brand new, environment. Dan Mullen's used to it. He coached at Mississippi State, so he's been to Death Valley. He was offensive coordinator at Florida before. He's been to Death Valley. Not new to him, not new to some of these players, these veteran players for the Gators. So it's not like Florida is going to be in for a big culture shock when they come to the night game against Death Valley. Even though it's a difficult place to play, it's not going to be anything too big and nothing that Florida can't handle. But if they want to come in and win this game, they first off have to allow Kyle Trask to complete easy passes, to ease him in, because this will be a brand new environment for Kyle Trask. This will be the toughest environment he has played in to date as a starter, and the toughest defense he has played in to date as a starter. Yes, I'm sorry, Auburn. You might have a better defensive line, but I think collectively LSU has a better defense. Allow him to complete some easy throws. Second play from scrimmage for Florida last week against Auburn. Slant across the middle, took it, 70 yards to the house? Kyle Trask didn't have to do anything except complete the pass. I think it was Freddie Swain. He did the rest. So, complete some easy passes. Ease Kyle Trask into this game so that way when you're getting into the second half, maybe you can see it get a little more complex. But ease Kyle Trask into this. Complete some easy throws. Allow him to do that. Second off, of course, don't get rattled by the environment. We mentioned how Florida, this shouldn't be a big culture shock for them. But Death Valley, as we've said over and over, is still one of the most difficult places to play regardless of the time, let alone at night. By far, one of the toughest places to play. Don't commit stupid penalties, false starts, holdings, delay of games because of the crowd noise. They have to be able to handle that. They have to be prepared for that because every single yard counts in a game like this. Florida cannot allow for stupid things like that to happen. And lastly, for Florida, they have to create pressure. We mentioned Todd Grantham's defense, how well they've done rushing the quarterback, how well they did against Bo Nix last week, rattling him. Only 11 completions. He threw 3 interceptions, multiple sacks. They did 10 against Miami. We know what they're capable of. Pressure Joe Burrow. Force him into some bad throws. Make LSU get into second, third, and long situations. And if you do that defensively, they're going to have a very good chance of winning this game. They've got to continue the pressure much like they've done this entire season. And I believe that Todd Grantham knows what he needs to do and will do that coming into this game. For LSU, this might be pretty hard to do, but they've got to establish a run game. Neither team has been very good against the run. They've done a great job at stopping the run, but neither team has a great run game anyways. LSU averages 155 rushing yards per game. Florida averages 139.8. We mentioned last week the key for Florida was to establish a run game, and they didn't really establish one, but the biggest play of the game came on an 88-yard touchdown run from LaMichael Pirine. Fine by me. They established it. They got a run play. It won the game for them practically. It gave them enough separation from Auburn to get up 11 that they had a big enough cushion. The defense did the rest from there. LSU needs to do that. LSU needs to get a little bit of a ground game going. If you can just get up a couple chunks of yards, positive plays, 4 or 5 yard gains every now and then consistently, that will set up the pass for Joe Burrow. And Lord help Florida secondary if they bite hard on a play action pass, because Joe Burrow is not going to miss. That man is accurate and that man takes care of the football. And that was another key, is create turnovers. They do a great job of keeping the ball to themselves, LSU does. Florida, though, in SEC play, has not. They had 4 turnovers against Auburn. They had 3 turnovers versus Tennessee. And they had 2 turnovers versus Kentucky. Against their other opponents, they haven't done too bad. But in SEC play, they've had 3 games and committed 9 turnovers. That's averaging 3 a game. So if LSU can create some turnovers by pressuring Kyle Trask, forcing some fumbles, getting some interceptions, DBU steps up, then it's going to be a long day for this Florida offense. And that's the final thing as well, is we mentioned DBU stepping up. Force Florida to win on the ground. If DBU steps up, I keep saying DBU because I believe that they can be. I believe they are DBU, but they've got to show it. LSU, you've got it. You just got to show it. If they step up, if LSU secondary steps up and forces Florida to win this game on the ground, where LSU's only allowing about 80 yards per game on the ground, then they are not going to win this game. force Kyle Trask into some bad throws, force him into some interceptions, make him scared to run the ball, make him scared to throw the ball every time he steps back into the pocket. You do that, LSU walks away with a victory. And that's exactly what's going to happen. A night game in Death Valley, 2 top 10 teams, 2 teams that absolutely deserve to be there. But home field advantage and quarterback experience is the edge in this one for LSU. The Tigers get a huge win at home over the Gators, a quality top 10 opponent. The Gators don't drop much. It's been 5 straight games that this meeting has been decided by 1 possession. Expected to be 6 straight games decided by 1 possession by the end of Saturday night. But in the end, LSU escapes with a win, has another huge resume booster for the college football playoff, and I believe they can run the table up until that Alabama game. And you know that one's going to be our game of the week when the time rolls around. So guys, thank you for watching us here on YouTube. Make sure you go follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Gridiron Expert, and check out our official website, thegridironexpert.com. Sign up for our newsletter and sign up for our expert picks. They just came out today, so I can promise you don't want to miss them. And once again, thank you for watching. Please continue to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time on the Gridiron Expert.